All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of record a section, and this is about how to present a solution. And what we're doing is we're making an assumption now that you've gone all the way through, you have seen what the client has, they either have coverage or they don't. The easiest training to do is to assume they have no coverage, or to assume they have coverage that it's in their best interest not to replace, like the guy we saw today.
Right.
The guy we saw today for recording purposes is on kidney dialysis. He has $7,000 worth of coverage. The policies are all over 2 years old, so he has day one coverage. It would be in his worst interest to replace those policies, so we would never do that. But he only has $7,000, so he needs to add coverage to it. So this is the way that I do a presentation to close on people with no coverage or people that don't have enough. And it goes something like this. All right, so Mr. Arthur, look, like I told you earlier, and I showed you companies that I know you would be familiar with, okay? Now what I'm doing for the recording is I'm going back to my slides that show all of the insurance carriers. I know that you're familiar with all these, and like I told you before, I've got this insurance guru named Brian Celestine, and I really rely on Mr. Brian to help our clients. Now, you'll never have to talk to Brian, or well, you can talk to him, but you'll never have to do business with him. You're my client. But I rely on Mr. Brian to help us navigate. Mr. Brian will shop all carriers for you and help us find the best fit.
Okay.
And Mr. Scott, I know today, because you don't have any coverage, something is better than nothing. And I want Mr. Brian to shop this for you. Now, at your current age, let me just tell you, funerals, I'm just going to give you some background. My grandfather, who I love dearly, I'm 50, he passed away the day before my 22nd birthday. And I miss that man even today. But his funeral 28 years ago was $5,500. That's 28 years ago. Now, I just went to the funeral home 2 weeks ago for an 81-year-old lady, client of mine that passed, and her funeral right down here at Heavenly Gates, local funeral home, $10,138. Okay? Now, Mr. Scott, you're a fairly young man. Okay? If a funeral today costs $10,000, you're only 53, 54, you should live another 30 years. What do you think funerals are going to cost 30 years from now?
Twice that much.
At least. So I would really like to see you have 20 to 25,000 worth of coverage if you can handle it. Let me explain why. It's never going to be cheaper than it is today,
Right.
because it's your age sets the price. Money pays for it, but your age sets the price. And now I will come back to you in 20 years, Lord willing, we're both here, right? I will be happy to come back and add some coverage to you, but if you can handle it today, that's what I want you to do. And that's what I'm going to have Mr. Brian do, is shop this for us. But look, we need a target. I don't want Mr. Brian shopping for $1 million worth of coverage. I tell people like this, I don't want to shop him for a Ferrari when we can afford a Cadillac.
Right.
Make sense?
Right.
So here's what I want to do. I've kind of looked up some rates and kind of know a range. I can tell you that, let me just jot this down for you, and that way you can look at this. Now, what I want you to understand is, you're not what I call the cleanest of applications. I'm having to deal with your high blood pressure. We're having to deal with, the diabetes, even though it's not serious right now. One thing we've learned about diabetes is it never goes away. It can get worse, and usually does. So we want to try to get you locked in at the best rate possible today. So let me just kind of give you some ranges that I can tell you that would be in, so we can have give Mr. Brian a target to shoot for, okay? So let me just show you this. Take a look at this for me.
Okay.
I can tell you that 10,000, which is the least, I just don't want to see you have any less. Now, if you can't afford it, hey, look, something's better than nothing. But at least 10 today, that's going to be somewhere between 50 to 75 a month. 15 will be between 75 and 100. 25 will be between 100 and 125.
Okay.
Now, here's what I need you to do for me, Mr. Scott. Which one of these ranges would best fit in your budget? Now, look, don't tell me what I want to hear, because when Christmas rolls around, I want to make sure that you can handle this and not let it go, okay? I want to make sure you can buy Christmas presents and still handle this. So out of these three ranges, what do you think you could fit in your budget most comfortably?
The middle one,
So somewhere between 75 and 100?
right.
Okay, I promise you we won't go higher than that, and I'll let Mr. Bryan know that, okay? Let me get him on the phone right now, okay? Now, number one, guys, never ever have me on speakerphone right now, okay? Always, and turn your volume down. I don't want the client to be able to hear what I'm asking, okay? So the phone rings, it's ring, ring, ring. Hello, yeah, Mr. Joe? Or in your case, you'd say Mr. Joe, I'm gonna say Mr. Bryan. Mr. Bryan, yeah, I'm sitting here with a Mr. Arthur Scott, and I told him that you are the guru of insurance. You are our specialist for our seniors, and you love to help them. Look, let me just tell you briefly what we're dealing with. Mr. Scott, he does have some challenges, and I know you're good at this, but he's got a little light sugar. He takes a little metformin, but no insulin. He does have a big bald head that might hurt him. No, I'm just picking at you. No, he's got some high blood pressure going on too, and I know that's not the best of combinations. I know you'd like to hear something different, but he's got a target. He has no coverage right now, but he's got a target of 75 to 100. So whatever you do, don't take him over that mark. What would you recommend that we do? Really? Preferred rating for diabetics? Even bald-headed No, I'm just picking at you, Mr. Scott. Yeah, okay. No, I'll do that. I'll get that sent over to you right away. All right. Thank you, Mr. Joe. Okay. Now, what I'm doing is I'm setting the table. I want to move to the iPad, okay? And what I just did with those remarks, I set it up to where I'm fixing to send Mr. Joe some information. So here's the way it would role play. All right, so Mr. Scott, you gave me the range. I tell you what, Mr. Joe thinks that he might be able to get you a preferred rating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some information from you. I'm going to put it in my iPad, and we're going to send it off. We're going to start with a company called Americo. Mr. Joe's going to be overseeing this, and he's going to shop this through a bunch of different carriers for us. And he may even email me back or send me an instant message asking me some more questions to ask you, or he may want me to get you on the phone with an underwriter or something. Now, let me explain. Number one, I don't need any money from you today. I don't want any money. I've just got to see if we can even get you qualified, okay? And then when we do get you qualified, I'm going to make sure that we keep you in your budget. Fair enough? Okay. I need to ask you some questions. So what's your middle initial?
D.
Great. Now, while I'm pulling this up, just want to ask you some general health questions. Have you been in the hospital in the last 5 years for anything?
No.
Okay, now what I'm doing, guys, is I'm connecting to the internet, pulling up my iPad, getting my Americo Eagle Premier app ready to go. All right, so any cancer, heart attack, stroke,